Welcome to DT Madness, Chronicles from the Third Life, episode 109, October 27th, 2024. So glad you could make it. Welcome to the madness this Sunday afternoon. Since last episode, the Chronicles from the Third Life podcast has crossed the 5,000 download mark, which is pretty wild. I think it's up to 5,062 now. I don't know if they're human downloads or not, because there certainly are spikes here and there where, over 100 a day. And it's gone global too. Brazil, China, Canada, Bangladesh, and Germany. A huge fan base in Bangladesh for the DT Madness. It could be the liver mush. Maybe that is what reached out to the world. Regardless, I don't know if, or maybe they know that I'm the mayor of Boiling Springs and that I'm up and coming, and that, maybe they know where the power centers really are. So maybe there's some spies listening in. I'm not sure. How's it going, guys? If so, anyway, um, and just a couple of days ago, I guess it was Friday the 25th of October, that Phil Lesh passed away. Phil Lesh was the bassist for the Grateful Dead, founding member, with Jerry Garcia and Bob Weir, Kreutzmann, um, Pigpen. But Phil's kind of the heart and the soul. I mean, Jerry is Jerry, of course, but Phil Lesh kind of, how did Mike Gordon put it? The bassist for Fish wrote about Phil and said that, there's this line between uh, holding down the foundation and then also exploring melody. And he said that Phil was able to do that really better than any bassist he had ever heard. But it's a thing. Like, the Grateful Dead has meant quite a bit to me, and so I do want to talk a little bit about my Dead history. Some of these things I've said before here on the podcast. When my friend Jeremy was, when we were in, I don't know, maybe ninth grade, somewhere around in there, his dad wanted him to give up the gangster rap, and so we gave all that up, um, and then went to the sound shop, our local record store, which was CDs, by then, and we're able to buy a whole bunch. And one of the things that we bought was the Grateful Dead, basically like the greatest hits, Skeletons from the Closet, and began to get into the Grateful Dead in that way. The album, um, American Beauty, which is probably the best. I think it's. I'd have to go back and listen to episode 1. Did I put it in my top 5 of all time? It'd be up there if I didn't. But the song "Box of Rain," which Phil actually sings, which just has beautiful lyrics, it was the exact amount of time to get from my friend Gabe's house back home. So I knew, I'd always push it right till the end. If my curfew was midnight or whatever, and I knew I could leave at 11:54, listen to 6 minutes of "Box of Rain" on the way home, and get there right on time. Still one of my favorites. That "Ramble on Rose." Again, I've said this as well. Kind of when I really first knew that this was something different, when I was at UNC Charlotte with my friend Joe and Topher, and some girls that were there from Maryland. I don't know why I remember that from Maryland, but I don't know why I remembered any of this. I just remember they had dreads, and this is kind of my first out of Cleveland County type experience. And they were singing along with "Ramble on Rose" and just doing harmonies, and man, it was something. Me and my friends went to Further Fest in 1997, which, uh, if you know, then Jerry passed away in '95. Um, and so Furtherfest was the entire band besides Jerry. And one of the few times they would go off and do Phil and Friends and Dead and Company with John Mayer, and they've had several different iterations of the band, but that was pretty cool to see Phil and Bob and Bill and all of them together at the Further Fest. I remember having a tape of some 1977 shows, cassette tapes, and I remember how those musical notes just danced off, uh, man, just into the stratosphere during those days. Me and my friend Topher, when we lived together, we would collect the Dick's Picks. Yes, that's what they were called. The guy's name was Dick. I don't remember what his last name was. And this is before, like, cell phones really became a thing. And so it is unfortunate they've changed it to Dave's Picks now. But the Dick's Picks were just different shows, different live shows of the Grateful Dead that um, were released and on CD, which usually it was a three CD pack, like the double case, if you remember. And me and my friend Topher would listen to those and look forward to them when they would come out. I still to this day love listening to a good 30-minute Dark Star. The one from 11/11/1973 is usually my go-to. It drops into Eyes of the World. There's a one that's recent I've been listening to, I think from '72, that goes into Morning Dew. But it's there, like it's in those just beautiful, out of this world in some places, like really stretching, uh, dissonant jazz, and but Phil with those bombs, and Phil with his exploratory sonic, sounds, sonic sounds. Sounds are sonic. Um, and then of course Reckoning. Reckoning is a acoustic album from the Grateful Dead around the 1980 area, and the song "Must Have Been the Roses" from that album was on my wedding reception mix, and that was my job. I got to be in charge of the music. And Ripple is the greatest song of all time, and I don't think there's. I mean, it's pretty objective. So anyway, thank you, Phil. Thank you, Phil Lesh. Thank you to the Grateful Dead, man. Um, the music lives on, of course. And if you get confused, just listen to the music play. So yeah, moving on. I'll talk about Sydney wrapped up tennis, and um, that was a thing. She had quite a career. Tennis has meant a lot to our family, as we've talked about. You can hear about that in episode 2. But yeah, Sydney started playing when she was a freshman, and then sophomore year she earned her spot as the number one on the team, and then held on to that the last 2 years, and um, won the conference championship in doubles last year. Finished runner up in the conference championship this year in singles. Poured her heart and soul out onto that. Learned that being number two is not all that bad. That even though we strive for being the absolute best, that the striving is really where it's at. The results are great, and she's got those too. We took a trip to Ashe County, and it was wild. Like I drove, we usually would drive a suburban. The school has Suburbans, and but one of them hit a deer, and so they had to rent a ride for us. And so I took 6 girls up in an Enterprise rented Grand Wagoneer, and it was really something. It had a lot of different kinds of buttons. The rearview mirror was a camera, and I didn't like that. It was something I really didn't like, and it took us a long time. And finally, the girls found on TikTok um, how to fix it. That was on the ride home. It had a back massager, and so I think I went for I didn't like waterfalls. What did I like? Like rock climbing. I think that's what it was called. So I was getting a back massage as I was driving. We went to Ashe County, and we didn't go through Boone. It actually took us around Wilkesboro because some of the roads were closed. And we got on this real squiggly road and behind a truck that was carrying a load of lumber. And yeah, it was a whole thing. Um, I had to, man, I had to pee so bad on the way up there, and I'm like, there's nowhere. That was a struggle. But we got there, we played the tennis match. It was just beautiful up in Ashe County. We didn't have much of a chance, and we knew that going in. They were way better than we were. We were a very low ranked seed, and so but we got to go up there and play one more time. And Sam was able to come down and from Boone and see us, and then we rolled on back in a straighter path on the way home, and listening to music and talking about all kinds of stuff. I just wow, 6, 15 to 17-year-old high school girls talking about the things that they talk about. I just zone out, I try to zone out. But we got back and we got back into school, and Sydney dropped her song, which is the song that get us hype every time we would ride up to somewhere. And she put it on for one last time, apple bottom jeans and the boots with the fur. And we were bumping loud. It was, you know, in the Grand Wagoneer. We talked about tennis a little bit the other night about how, we're pretty good. And I don't mean any judgment or anything by any of this, but so I guess I'll preface all of that coming up. But like, we're county people and relatively rural, maybe pushing suburban, but mostly rural. And our girls don't train at the country club or with private lessons. And Sydney just started playing her ninth grade year, and so when we run into some of these other people from lake areas, Lake Norman usually dominates that area, dominates in tennis. These girls have been training. They have the resources to do all that kind of stuff. And so we were talking about, if I had any, you know, rich friends like that. And I think that's how it came up with. And I was like, I can't really think of any friends that I have that I would consider rich in that kind of way. People who really have a ton of wealth that um, they can just kind of throw around, I guess. And I got to thinking about it, and Sydney blurts out that she was trying to think of somebody too, and she blurts out, there's not much to work with here. And we all had a nice little chuckle, and um, yeah, because and what she meant by that is not that I not rich friends, but just friends in general. Uh, so here I am, the middle aged man that fits all the articles about how difficult it is to find relationships in your adult years. But anyway, I am working to get back into shape after tennis season. Tennis season definitely helped me pack on about 10 pounds. I didn't think that was going to be the case. I'm trying a couple of different things, like some of that green powder. That's not gonna last. I just did the one trial, and I'm just gonna stick with the Cachava and all that. But I started walking and doing my 4 mile loop around Gardner Webb, trying to get back into doing the weights and stuff like that. It's not overly working at it's not working out too good so far. But I know that reshaping habits is a process. Um, because my habit right now, like when I went to the Hunter Husk game the other night at the Crest football game, I stopped by this ice cream place called Handles, and man, it was called coffee chocolate chip, and then also I got a scoop of vanilla caramel cookie or caramel brownie, and oh my god, it was so good. And then just today we drove up. This morning we drove up to Boone, which is why I'm doing the podcast in the afternoon instead of this morning, and we ate at Boone Bakery, and they had one that was chocolate chip cream cheese. Oh my lord, it was. I'm definitely going to go back and get some of that. So I got to get to the point where I'm in good habits and I'm doing exercise and blah blah blah, you know, so that I can once in a while eat ice cream every day. I did have a moment. I had a moment the other night, thinking about I have this thing, like I already really consider myself 47, but I'm not. I won't be 47 um, until January, until late January. But I kind of go ahead and get into thinking about it just to get my mind right. But like, yeesh, the reality is that Thomas men don't tend to make it much past 70. Um, Now maybe things will change, and maybe I got a little bit of the Bridges side, my mom's side. Those folks live for a while, and but either way, I'm like, well, dang man, I'm really pushing 50 here, and pushing 50, and whew, let's say 75. That's 20. Man, like the days left, you would think are shorter than the days spent so far, and all that's fine, like all that's fine, and I've been listening to Aerosmith, Dream On, and maybe tomorrow the good Lord will take you away. So I recognize all of that kind of stuff. I recognize life and death and all that kind of stuff. But either way, it got me. It got me the other night, and so I've been thinking about that some. I try to start reading The Lord of the Rings again. I didn't get into it. I'm probably just gonna have to skip all the very beginning part and actually getting to the thing. But I did find this quote that popped up on my Amazon photos, other evils there are that may come, for Sauron is himself but a servant or emissary. Yet it is not our part to master all the tides of the world, but to do what is in us for the succor of those years wherein we are set, uprooting the evil in the fields that we know, so that those who live after may have clean earth to till. What weather they shall have is not ours to rule. And that's from the Return of the King. So I kicked out this, I put that on top of the page, and then, I wrote 5 questions. What does sucker mean anyway? Do you think people from different sides of our political divide could read this quotation and agree with it, but for completely different reasons? Explain your answer. What is your take on this quote? Would it make a difference if you knew the years wherein we are set? In other words, do we take our time in the fields for granted? What fields? Where is your work? And if you were able to leave clean earth to till for those who live after, describe what that looks/feels like. I gave that to my AP seminar kids, and some of them started to get towards that, but I don't know. Like a lot of them just said that the quote was confusing, and maybe the way I wrote the questions was confusing. And so we're going to have to unpack that on Monday. It is a little bit like, it's a little bit disheartening to me that the kids don't think like that. And I know I'm 47. I've been doing this for, I'm 46. I know I'm 46 and I've been doing this for a long time and thinking about things in a deep way. And I know a lot of people don't do that in general. But these are the kids that should be reaching towards next levels. And I know I can think back to me when I was them. I know I was reading poems, and I read the things that I write, and it's a little bit disheartening that they haven't been challenged to think in these types of ways to the point where they really, I don't even know if they can. They're going to be able to after this coming week, because we're going to spend some time doing all that. But yeah, I mean, it's something that I have been thinking about too. That, you know, what are my fields? And I feel like maybe in some ways I'm just spinning my wheels, and that I'm stuck. Like I think about the song, could I have been something or another, that Dave Matthews sings. Like, should I have reached for more professionally, or should I put my cards on the table more often? Um, I don't know. These are things I've been thinking about, and like, where's this balance? Because on the one hand, if my days are shorter and they're growing shorter, they surely are, then isn't it time for me to kick in? Isn't it time for me to really enjoy life? Isn't it time for me to do the things that I want to do, to pursue my goals, and to stop holding my cards so close? Or should I continue this kind of preservation and there's certainly a balance, right? Like I don't want to just go crazy and eat cheeseburgers and milkshakes all the time, just to use food as an example. Um, I have thought about what it would be like to have a nice cold IPA after 4 years, and whether or not I could just have one, or even just two in a month or so. And I'm not sure about that. We see my ice cream addiction. Um, but like, Where is that balance? I want to suck the marrow out of life, as Thoreau says, but I don't want to choke on the bone. If you've seen Dead Poets. So anyway, I've been thinking about that. I've been rethinking the way I teach my classes, and I just really frustrated with my first period and like the way that the state of education today, and like the role of parents, and yeah, I don't want to get into all that right now, but um, like reorganizing my life, it'll certainly play itself out in me, like paring down the few shirts and pants that I have. Like I always clean out my closets when I get into this situation and just start really like letting go of stuff. Um, so yeah. Anyway, that's just me. I'm just doing some verbal vomit here. Thanks for listening. I did get to run the flag at the football game the other night. Like I went and to it's the first away game I've been to this year, and so I was sitting there by myself, of course, because again, there's not much to work with. But I'm sitting there by myself, kind of near the students and the so-called crest crazies, and they're down there just kind of standing on the track and talking with each other and not really even paying attention to the game. And so I started talking junk to them because, like, I'm a original crest crazy, and like, come on, man, you got to hold up your end of the bargain if you're going to call yourself that. And they do a pretty good job at home games and whatever. And so we scored a touchdown, and they didn't even run the flag up and down the sideline. And it was because they didn't think there was enough people and they were worried about what people were going to think about them. And I'm like, well, it's bullcrap. Give me the flag. I'll do it next time. And I did. I ran the flag. 46-year-old man running a lot slower. But that was fun, man. Press crazies. Those days of getting painted up and with the guys, and sometimes um, some of our other friends would come over and help us paint. But yeah, anyway. So I'm going to give you a chance here. If you want, you can tap out. I'm not going to talk about anything else rambling on life in the next about 10 seconds or so. I'm going to tell you why I voted, what I voted for. Not necessarily who. You can deduce if you want. Um, but if you want to skip, I'm not going to say anything other than that. I'll give my sign off credits. So a short episode today, but here you go. Last warning. I did. I voted early, and I've never voted early before. I always like the rush of voting on election day, but we're voting at town hall this year, which is where I'm the mayor, and it's just a very limited what do you call it, ingress, and egress, and I know it's going to be a bunch of people coming out to vote, and I just think that the traffic's going to be wild, and so I was like, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and vote early. Also, I had on my shirt that said never underestimate a public school teacher. And I thought if I put my sticker on that shirt, it's going to make a good Instagram post and eventually Facebook post for the reason, number one, of why I voted. And number one reason why I voted, rational choice voting, as we would call it in AP government, is because I voted for people who want to protect public education. I don't want to cut the Department of Education. I don't want you to cut the Department of Education. And then even if you give that $30 billion back to North Carolina, I don't want that to come in the form of a block grant that will go to fund more opportunity scholarships, so called vouchers. Um, we've lost over $10 million in Cleveland County schools. And I'm not saying there doesn't need to be reform, and there definitely needs to be reform. You hear me talking about the frustrations I have. And I'm all for reform, but public schools are central to our communities, maybe the center of our communities. And I love what I get to do and teach all these different kids from different backgrounds and try to figure out ways to educate them further to improve the community. Um, I'm not for people who think that we're cesspools of lies and satanic rituals or whatever it is this lady from that wants to be superintendent of public education thinks. So I definitely voted for Mo Green. I can't even remember what her name is. I know she took her kids to the January 6th rally, and I know she says that whatever. And she may have some good ideas. She may have some legitimate um, topics that we need to talk about. But public education is the reason why I voted the way I voted from the top to the bottom. And I didn't vote straight ticket. I didn't. I definitely voted for Republicans and for Democrats, and et cetera. The number two thing I voted for was to not have a forced expulsion of immigrants. Um, that's the plan for Mr. Trump, is to have a forced expulsion, for which he said his words would be uh, a bloody exercise. 10, 20 million, whatever it is. And I'm for fixing the immigration system, and I'm for strengthening the border. I am. But many of those people who came here are here because, even though maybe on the one hand people are saying don't come, really they're waving people on in so that they can get cheap labor. And so the corporate responsibility, um, the top level economics responsibility, and then to say we're going to have a forced expulsion. I'm fine with dealing with the issue. I'm fine with reconciling and wrestling with cultural impacts. I'm fine with all that. The economy argument is weak to me. You don't say anything about your 401k. The stock market is higher than it's ever been. It's performed better in the past 4 years than it did the previous four. Um, the people who are talking about the economy as my number one issue are fairly well off. Like, these aren't people who are struggling. They're not. They're not people who are struggling. And yeah, I know the price of eggs is higher and groceries has hit us hard too, but I'm a public school teacher, and my wife is a public servant as well, working for a federally funded grant program. And we got three kids, one in college, one about to be, and we okay, you know. So the economy argument is weak to me. Yes, I know gas was $1.80, whatever, but that's because nobody was driving anywhere, because the world was shut down because of COVID. You know what I'm saying? The economy argument is weak. I like Mayor Pete. I do. I like Mayor Pete. Pete Buttigieg, Secretary of Transport. I should call him Secretary of Transportation, Pete Buttigieg. What a thoughtful, rational human being. What a articulate and statesman he is. Um, I voted the way I voted because there are some people who think that we should just go ahead and award Donald Trump the electoral votes from North Carolina because of the hurricane. And the people would have voted for Donald Trump, and they might not be able to. And so if he loses, they're saying this already. So the election denialism, this, oh, they cheated, that kind of stuff, I'm tired of that. Tired of that. Um, Republicans want to put up somebody that's a real politician, like a real statesman, a real leader, stateswoman. I think if you would have picked Nikki Haley, then she'd be running away with it. I talked about the superintendent of public schools. That was an easy one to vote for. Certainly not going to vote for the so-called black Nazi, Mark Robinson. Not going to vote for him. Yeah. Um, I did vote for other Republicans. I voted for other Republicans for um, state offices, ones that I've worked with, ones that I know. Um, Not that we agree necessarily. I don't agree with very many people on all things. You know, we should have vigorous debate. I'm not a party guy. I'm not a partisan guy. I'm unaffiliated. I got things that I believe that are very conservative, socially and economically, and I got things that aren't. And so I look for the person that is going to be serious about their job, and not just a party hack. And I vote for those people. And I voted for myself. I wrote myself in for county commissioner. So there's that. Um, but hopefully, yeah, hopefully. This has been a Church of Six. production brought to you by the Bucket of Life, the Rope of Relationship, the Foundation Tower of Stone, the Wall of Belief, the Token of Hope, and the Magic Rock times one received and one given. Nothing divine is desperate, and in order to be, try to never seen. May all your circumstances serve to awaken compassion, and as you go, teach peace. Don't forget to believe, y'all, and be live. Grace and peace, my friends.